The grand ballroom of a five-star London hotel glittered with crystal chandeliers casting cold light over designer gowns and tailored suits. Amid whispered conversations, a young woman in a pristine white dress emerged, the illegitimate daughter of a renowned financial CEO. Suddenly, several figures rushed forward, hurling insults. "Shameful bastard child." I, Ethan, 40, single dad, former Navy SEAL, was working the night security shift. As someone's hand reached toward her, I stepped forward, my voice low and steel hard. "Try touching her and see what happens." The crowd froze. The atmosphere turned ice cold. Everything was about to escalate dramatically. My name is Ethan Cole. At 40, I've traded desert combat boots for security guard shoes, but some instincts never fade, like recognizing when someone's about to get hurt. Three things define me: a solid build that's held up better than expected, hair graying prematurely at the temples, and a long scar on my right wrist from a mission that went sideways in Afghanistan. After my wife died from cancer 3 years ago, I raised our 11-year-old daughter Emma alone. Our rented flat in outer London wasn't much, windows overlooking the train station, peeling wallpaper, secondhand furniture, but it was ours. Every night, no matter how late I got home, I'd toast bread for Emma. Just cheap 99p loaves from Tesco. But the ritual mattered more than the meal. My current job was contract security at the Ashford Grand Hotel. Upscale events, wealthy clients, the kind of people who never notice guards unless something went wrong. Tonight, I'd been assigned to the ballroom where the Moretti family was hosting an anniversary gala. Antonio Moretti, CEO of Moretti Financial Group, one of London's most powerful banking dynasties. That's when I first saw Clara Moretti. She was 27, moving through the crowd with the careful posture of someone trying to be invisible. Beautiful in an understated way. Dark hair swept back, elegant but not flashy, eyes that held more sadness than someone her age should carry. The whisper started immediately. "That's her, the illegitimate daughter. Can you believe Antonio brought her here? The scandal. Poor thing. Imagine being reminded you're unwanted at your own father's celebration." I'd seen this before. Pack mentality, the way groups turned on perceived weakness. In combat, it meant identifying enemy positions. In civilian life, it meant watching for when whispers became violence. It happened faster than expected. 3 people, relatives from the look of their expensive clothes and entitled expressions, approached Clara as she stood near the French doors, clearly trying to find an exit. "You shouldn't be here," one woman hissed, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Your mother was a mistake, and so are you." Clara's face went white, but she held her ground. "I was invited." "By who?" "Antonio feels obligated, that's all. You're an embarrassment to this family." A man reached out to grab Clara's arm. His grip meant to hurt, to reinforce her place in their hierarchy. That's when I moved. Years of SEAL training meant I covered the distance in seconds, positioning myself between Clara and her attackers with movements that looked casual, but were absolutely calculated. "Step back," I said quietly. The man looked at me like I was furniture that had spoken. "This is family business. Security shouldn't interfere." I met his eyes with the particular kind of calm that comes from having faced down actual threats, not just social ones. My job is protecting guests from harm. That includes this guest, so I'll say it once more. Step back. Something in my tone, maybe the military bearing I couldn't quite shed, maybe just the certainty of someone who knew exactly how much damage he could do, made them reconsider. They backed off, muttering about reporting me to management, but I didn't care. I'd been fired from better jobs for worse reasons. Clara looked at me, shock and something like gratitude mixing in her expression. "Thank you," she whispered. On my left hand, my silver ring caught the chandelier light. Engraved E plus E, Emma and Elena, my daughter and my late wife. A reminder of why I took this work, why I endured the night shifts and modest pay. In my pocket, I felt the weight of my phone bill, 02 PS 4230. Another reminder of the constant financial juggling that defined single parenthood. But right now, none of that mattered as much as the scared young woman who just learned that someone would stand up for her. After the incident, My supervisor instructed me to escort Clara to her private suite. Hotel policy after any disturbance involving guests. We walked in silence through the ornate corridors, her heels clicking on marble floors, both of us processing what had just happened. "Aren't you afraid they'll complain about you?" she finally asked. "My family has influence. They could have you fired." I kept my eyes forward, scanning for threats out of habit. "I've walked into terrorist compounds. I'm not particularly worried about chandelier politics." She let out a surprised laugh, short, genuine, like she'd forgotten that was something she could do. In her suite, Clara kicked off her heels and sank onto the couch, the elegant facade crumbling to reveal exhaustion underneath. I handed her a bottle of water from the minibar. "Tonight, you're not alone." She looked at the water, then at me, as if trying to figure out if I was real or just another performance. "My father only acknowledges me when it's politically convenient," she said, the words spilling out like she'd been holding them too long. "I'm the proof of his affair, the reminder that he's not the perfect family man his image requires." I sat in the chair across from her, maintaining proper distance. I was a SEAL, lost teammates in operations I can't talk about, lost my wife to something I couldn't fight. Now it's just me and my daughter. She's the only reason I get up each morning. Clara studied my face. "At least you have someone to go home to." The loneliness in her voice was profound. Not the loneliness of being alone, but of being surrounded by people who wished you didn't exist. "Parenthood isn't easy," I admitted, "especially alone. But Emma gives me purpose. When everything else feels meaningless, she matters." "What's she like?" "Curious, kind, obsessed with Lego and terrible at keeping her room clean. She asks questions I can't answer and makes observations that are way too insightful for 11. Clara smiled, a real one this time. "She sounds wonderful." The next morning, against my better judgment, I brought Emma to the hotel. My shift didn't start until evening, and Clara had texted asking if she could meet us. Emma's eyes went wide at the hotel's grandeur. "Dad, this place is like a palace." "Smaller, actually. Most palaces have more rooms." Clara met us in one of the hotel's private lounges, and I watched carefully as she interacted with Emma. Some people were natural with kids. Others tried too hard. Clara just sat on the floor and started building Lego with my daughter like it was the most normal thing in the world. "You're good at this," Emma declared, examining Clara's architectural choices. "Most grown-ups try to make it look perfect. You make it look fun." "Maybe I'm making up for not playing enough as a child," Clara said quietly. Later, she attempted to make hot chocolate for Emma, her movements uncertain, clearly not used to domestic tasks. "This is really good," Emma said diplomatically, though I could see it was too watery. My silver ring glinted as I reached over to help steady the cup, protecting Clara from the heat and Emma from disappointment. Then Emma, with the directness only children possess, asked, "Do you have a daddy who makes you breakfast?" Clara froze. The question had clearly hit something painful. I quickly changed the subject, asking Emma about her school project, but the damage was done. Clara's eyes were wet with tears she was fighting to hide. After Emma went to wash her hands, Clara whispered, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to fall apart." "You didn't. Emma asks hard questions. She doesn't mean to hurt. She's just trying to understand the world. My father has never made me breakfast, never tucked me in, never asked about my day." Clara's voice was hollow. "I'm 27, and I'm still waiting for him to see me as his daughter instead of his mistake." I understood that particular pain. Not from my father, but from the service, where you could be valued for your skills while being invisible as a person. On the floor, Emma's underground ticket fluttered from her pocket, Zone 24 PS320, a reminder of our modest reality compared to this five-star hotel suite. "Clara," I said carefully, "you can't control how your father sees you, but you can control how you see yourself. And from where I'm sitting, you're not a mistake. You're someone who deserves better than what you've been given." She looked at me like I'd offered her something she'd stopped believing existed, simple human recognition of her worth. "Thank you, Ethan," she whispered, "for seeing me." The moment was interrupted by my phone, a text from my supervisor. The Moretti family wanted me removed from any events involving their gatherings. They were pressuring hotel management. Clara saw my expression. "What is it?" "Nothing that matters," I lied, not wanting to burden her with being the reason I might lose this job. But she'd already seen enough of the world's cruelty to recognize it in a text message. "They're trying to fire you because you protected me." I didn't answer, which was answer enough. Clara stood up, determination replacing the vulnerability. "Then I'll fight back. For the first time in my life, I'll actually fight back." The scandal broke the next morning. Someone had leaked photos from the gala, Clara being confronted, me stepping in. The obvious family drama playing out for public consumption. The tabloids ran with it. CEO's secret daughter exposed at family event, and Moretti banking heir's illegitimate child creates scene. Clara's phone exploded with calls. Mine rang exactly once, my supervisor telling me not to come to work until further notice. By afternoon, Clara received a summons to her father's office at Moretti Financial Group headquarters. "I have to go," she told me over the phone. "He wants to handle this situation. I'm coming with you. Ethan, you've done enough. They'll only make things worse for you." "Clara, I've faced enemy combatants who actually wanted me dead. Corporate intimidation doesn't rank high on my threat assessment." I met her outside the building, all glass and steel, a monument to financial power that made people feel small by design. Inside, we were directed to a private conference room. Antonio Moretti sat at the head of the table, flanked by lawyers and what I assumed were family members. He was exactly what I expected: expensive suit, commanding presence, the kind of man who'd never been told no and didn't plan to start now. "Clara," he said, not even acknowledging my presence, "we need to contain this situation." "Situation," she repeated. "You mean your daughter being publicly humiliated at your celebration?" "I mean the unfortunate publicity that's affecting the company's image." He pushed a stack of papers across the table. "This is a settlement agreement. You'll receive a substantial sum, a property in the countryside, and a monthly allowance. In exchange, you'll sign an NDA, change your last name, and make no further public appearances connected to this family." Clara stared at the papers like they were contaminated. "You're paying me to disappear. I'm providing for you while protecting the family's interests. It's a generous offer." I'd stayed quiet until now, but I couldn't hold back. "You call this generous? Buying your daughter's absence? That's not providing. That's purchasing silence because her existence inconveniences your image." Antonio finally looked at me. "And you are?" "Someone who actually gives a damn about her well-being." "You're a security guard who's about to be unemployed," one of the lawyers said. "You have no standing in this discussion." Clara's hands were shaking as she picked up the contract. For a moment, I thought she might sign, the weight of money and family pressure overwhelming her resistance. "All my life," she said quietly, "I've waited for you to acknowledge me as your daughter, to choose me over your reputation, your business, your other family. I've spent 27 years hoping that somehow I could earn your love." Antonio's expression didn't change. "Clara, be realistic. You're an adult. It's time to accept reality and move forward pragmatically." "You're right," she said, and my heart sank. "It is time to accept reality." She tore the contract in half. "The reality is that I'm your daughter whether you acknowledge it or not. The reality is that no amount of money will fill the hole you've left by treating me like a mistake. And the reality is that I'm done waiting for you to be the father you should have been." Antonio's face flushed with anger. "If you walk away from this, you get nothing. No money, no support, no connection to this family. You'll be alone." "Better alone than bought," Clara said. One of Antonio's men, security or family muscle, I couldn't tell, stood up and moved toward Clara. I stepped between them, my voice dropping to the tone that had preceded action in dozens of operations. "Try touching her and see what happens." The man hesitated. Antonio noticed, and his expression darkened. "Are you threatening my family?" "I'm protecting Clara, there's a difference. But if your people put hands on her, they'll discover that difference personally. The room went silent, everyone calculating whether I was serious. My military bearing, the controlled stillness that came before violence, must have been clear enough. "Get out," Antonio said finally. "Both of you. And Clara, understand this. You've made your choice. Don't come back expecting reconciliation." Clara walked out with her head high, but I saw her hands trembling. Once we reached the elevator, she collapsed against the wall. "I have nothing," she whispered. "No money, no family, nowhere to go." I thought about my wife's final words 3 years ago as cancer took her from us. "Ethan, don't let Emma grow up thinking that giving up is ever acceptable. Show her that standing up for what's right matters more than comfort or safety." I'd promised Elena I wouldn't let our daughter see me quit on what mattered. But looking at Clara, I realized that promise extended beyond just Emma. "You have somewhere to go," I said. "You have us." Clara looked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. "Ethan, you barely know me. You have a daughter to support, bills to pay, a life that doesn't have room for my problems." A hair clip shaped like a flower had fallen from Clara's hair during the confrontation. I picked it up and handed it to her. "Don't lose yourself," I said. "You just chose integrity over money, truth over comfort. That takes courage most people never find. Yes, life will be harder now. Yes, there will be consequences. But you'll have something Antonio and his contract couldn't provide, your self-respect." She took the hair clip with shaking hands. "Why are you helping me?" "Because someone should have been helping you all along. Because Emma's watching how I treat people who need support. And because I've seen enough cruelty in this world, I'm not going to stand by while it happens in front of me." Clara looked at the torn contract pieces still in her hand, then at the expensive building behind us, the monument to her father's power and her own exclusion. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "Good. That means you're alive and making real choices. Now come on. Emma's expecting us for dinner and I make a mean spaghetti that costs about 3 pounds to feed all of us." For the first time since I'd met her, Clara smiled without reservation. "That sounds perfect." Clara's transition from luxury to modest living was harder than any of us expected. She moved into a small flat 2 streets from ours, affordable because it shared a wall with the underground and had heating that worked sporadically at best. "I've never done laundry before," she confessed the first week, standing in the communal laundry room, holding a basket of clothes and looking utterly lost. Emma, taking her role as guide seriously, demonstrated proper detergent measurement and temperature settings. "You had servants?" Emma asked with 11-year-old directness. "House staff," Clara corrected gently. "And yes, they did everything. I'm learning that I'm fairly useless at practical things." But she wasn't useless, just untrained. Over the following weeks, Clara proved surprisingly adaptable. She learned to cook basic meals, following YouTube tutorials with the intensity I'd once applied to tactical briefings. Her first pasta was overcooked and undersalted, but Emma declared it delicious anyway. "It tastes like you tried really hard," Emma said, which was possibly the most diplomatic assessment of cooking I'd ever heard. I picked up extra security shifts, weddings, corporate events, anything that paid, while Clara searched for work. Her business degree from Oxford should have opened doors, but her sudden separation from the Moretti name complicated things. "Everyone wants to know why I left the family business," she told me one evening, frustrated. "And I can't exactly say my father paid me to disappear and I refused. Tell them you wanted to build something on your own merit." Will anyone believe that? The ones worth working for will. Emma became the bridge between Clara's old world and her new one. She'd visit Clara's flat after school, helping organize the chaos of someone learning adult independence late. One afternoon, I found them planting lavender in small pots on Clara's narrow balcony. "Emma says these grow even in bad conditions," Clara explained, her hands dirty with soil, something that would have been unthinkable weeks ago. "Lavender's tough," Emma agreed. "Like us." Clara looked at my daughter with such raw emotion that I had to look away. That evening when Emma was doing homework, Clara and I talked about the reality of our situation. I can't keep letting you help me, she said. You're already stretched thin financially. I see how you calculate every purchase, how you work extra shifts. My silver ring caught the light as I poured tea, cheap tea bags, but hot drinks made everything feel more manageable. Clara, you walked away from millions to maintain your integrity. Don't insult that choice by thinking you're a burden. But I am. You could barely afford your flat before adding me to your list of responsibilities. You're not on my list of responsibilities? You're on my list of people I care about. There's a difference. She was quiet for a moment, then, I got a call today from my father's lawyer. He wanted to know if I'd reconsider the settlement. My stomach tightened. What did you say? I said no, but Ethan, the money would solve so many problems. Emma could have better schools, you could work less. I could stop feeling like I'm drowning everyone around me. And you'd be right back where you started, defined by your father's money instead of your own choices. Clara nodded, but I could see the struggle. Principal was easier when it didn't mean watching a kid eat bargain pasta, while her father owned half of London's financial district. Emma appeared in the doorway, supposedly getting water but clearly eavesdropping. Clara, she said seriously, are you going to leave us for money? No, sweetheart, I'm staying right here. Good, because you're teaching me Italian, and I'm only up to buongiorno. After Emma went to bed, Clara broke down crying. I keep thinking about what I gave up, not the money. I don't care about the money, but the chance of ever having a real father, of ever being part of a family. I sat beside her, close but not crowding. Clara, the family you were born into didn't want you, but the family you're building with us, that's chosen, that's real. Antonio gave you DNA. We're giving you belonging. She leaned against my shoulder and I felt my ring press against her arm, Elena's ring. Elena's reminder that love was about showing up, not about blood or obligation. Your wife, Clara said quietly, she was lucky to have you. I was the lucky one. She taught me that family was about daily choices, making breakfast, asking about someone's day, standing up for them when the world got cruel. Is that what you're doing? Making a daily choice to include me? Every morning, I confirmed. Just like you're choosing to stay in a drafty flat and learn to do laundry instead of taking easy money. Through the window, we could see Clara's balcony with its lavender pots, small purple blooms struggling but surviving in London's polluted air. Emma had been right. Lavender was tough. It grew in difficult conditions because it was built for them. Maybe we all were, not despite our struggles, but because of them. Thank you, Ethan, Clara whispered, for showing me what a real family looks like. My ring caught the last light of evening. E. And I thought about how family had a way of expanding to include the people who needed it most. Elena would have liked Clara. She would have seen the strength underneath the polish, the courage and the choice to be poor but authentic. And she would have been proud that I was teaching Emma the same lesson, that the most important things you could give someone weren't material. They were presence, protection, and the permission to be themselves. 3 months after Clara tore up her father's contract, Emma presented us with a drawing during breakfast in our small kitchen. 3 stick figures holding hands in front of a modest house, lavender plants drawn carefully around them. Above in her careful handwriting, "My family." Clara stared at the drawing, tears streaming down her face. "Emma, are you sure? Including me in your family picture?" Emma looked confused. "You live here half the time. You make Dad laugh. You help me with my book report. That's what families do." I watched Clara struggle with emotions she probably never allowed herself to feel. The simple acceptance that came from a child who judged people by their presence rather than their pedigree. "If you both want me to stay," Clara said quietly, looking at me, "I'd like to. Not as a guest, not as someone you're helping, as family." Emma immediately hugged her. "Finally! Dad's been wanting to ask, but he was being all weird and grown up about it." I shot my daughter a look. "Thanks for that. It's true. You do that thing where you pause a lot and look worried." Clara laughed through her tears, the first completely unburdened laugh I'd heard from her. "For the record," I said, "I wasn't worried. I just wanted to make sure Clara had enough time to adjust before we asked her to make this permanent. I don't need more time, Clara said firmly. I've spent my whole life in luxury and felt empty. These past 3 months in a drafty flat with bargain pasta and secondhand furniture, I've never been happier. That evening, the three of us stood on Clara's small balcony, looking out over London as trains rumbled past and lights flickered on across the city. The lavender had flourished despite everything. Purple blooms releasing their fragrance into air, thick with diesel and urban noise. I can't believe these grew, Clara marveled. You took care of them, Emma pointed out. That's all plants need. Water, sun, and someone who cares enough to keep trying. Clara looked at me over Emma's head. Is that the secret to everything? Pretty much. Show up, care, keep trying even when it's hard. My silver ring glinted in the evening light as I put my arms around both of them. Elena's ring, reminding me that love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect circumstances. It was about morning coffee shared in a cramped kitchen, about helping with homework and learning to do laundry, about standing between someone and harm, whether that harm came from physical violence or emotional abandonment. Welcome home, Clara, I said. She smiled. No reservations, no masks, just genuine joy. Thank you for giving me one. Below us, London continued its eternal rhythm. Somewhere in a glass tower, Antonio Moretti probably didn't think about the daughter he'd tried to buy off. But here, in a modest flat with lavender on the balcony, that daughter had found something money couldn't purchase. She'd found the family she'd always deserved. Not the one she was born into, but the one she'd chosen and who had chosen her back. If you see yourself somewhere in this story, subscribe to HA Stories and leave a question you'd like to be healed. If you found yourself in this story, subscribe. HA Stories.